Hi guys, welcome to my channel. So this is the second video of general pharmacology, and the topics today which we'll be discussing are first pass metabolism and bioavailability. So before we dive into the actual discussion, let's have a quick recap of what all we have discussed in the previous lecture. We know that we have a background idea that pharmacokinetics have four parameters, that is absorption, distribution, metabolism, and elimination. Now, when the drug is absorbed inside the body, it crosses the mucosal barriers, inclusive of all the placenta, blood brain barrier, or the GIT barrier. Then it gets distributed inside our body, that means it enters into the tissues. After that, the drug, when it is distributed, the drug enters into the liver. In the liver, drugs gets metabolized. Now that metabolism which lead to the excretion of a metabolite which is less toxic. That means it is converted into water soluble substance so that it gets excreted out of into the urine. And the last part of pharmacokinetics is elimination, that is removing the drug out of the body. Now we also discuss about the types of the transport. Now transport involves that through which processes the drug that enters into the mucosal barrier. Now the first process was passive diffusion. Here what happens is that the drug has to flow according to the concentration gradient. Second is the facilitated diffusion. In this facilitated diffusion, the main characteristic is that drug has to be transported via carrier protein, right? Via carrier protein. And the third part was the active transport. In active transport, there is expenditure of the energy, and that is ATP is required. The two most important factors which we discussed in the last lecture was the lipid solubility of the drug and what is the pH of the medium. Now, if we talk about the lipid versus the water soluble drugs, more is the lipid soluble drug, more it will be able to cross the mucosal barrier, right? If it is water soluble, it won't be able to cross the barrier. Second is the pH of the medium. Now, if we talk about the pH of the medium, there is acidic drugs also and basic drugs also. So, if an acidic drug is kept inside an acidic medium, it will get absorbed, and if it is kept in basic medium, that means the drug will get ionized and thus it won't be able to cross the membrane. So this we discussed in the last lecture. Now today's topic of discussion is the first pass metabolism. Now we know that drug has entered inside our body, it will be distributed and the amount of drug will reach the liver. Inside the liver, there are few enzymes known as cytochrome enzyme which metabolizes the drug, and the amount of drug that comes out, it is less toxic. So this process of metabolism which occurs inside the liver, this is known as first pass metabolism. Now this first pass metabolism is different in different routes of administration. Like if we give through oral route, the drug will go inside the liver and it will get metabolized. But what if we are giving the drug via intravenous route? If we go give the drug through intravenous route, that means that drug is directly entering into the systemic circulation and it is not getting first pass metabolized. That means it bypasses the liver. So this is very important. What is the differentiation, which is also given in this figure, that what is the difference between oral or IV route of administration. There are few drugs which have high first pass metabolism. What are those drugs? They have a mnemonic to it. Nitrates have large pre-systemic metabolism. Now N for nitrates is also a name of the drug. From H we have hydrocortisone. L we have lignocaine. P we have propranolol, S we have salbutamol, and M we have the morphine. So all these drugs, they have high first pass metabolism, so we avoid giving them via oral route because the most of the drug will get metabolized and a very few therapeutic level of the drug will reach the site of action and there will be no therapeutic effect seen. So that is why these drugs have high first pass metabolism. Now, we have already discussed that different routes have different fate towards the first pass metabolism. So, if we talk about the oral route, we know that it has to cross through the liver, it will get metabolized. So, first pass metabolism is present if we give the drug via oral route. There are two formulations of the oral formulations which have different characteristics, like enteric coated tablets. Now, why do we call them enteric coated? Because they are covered with such a material that which is not acid labile. That means acid is not able to destroy that drug. So that drug get absorbed inside the duodenum, and the less pH or the acidic medium of the stomach do not destroy that drug. So the example of this drug is omeprazole. Next formulation of the oral formulation is the extended release preparation. In this, what happens is that when you give the drug, a small concentration of the drug get secreted inside the blood, and there is a compliance of the patient is improved, and for a longer period of time the drug remains in the plasma concentration. So this is an advantage of extended release preparation. Next comes the sublingual route. Now for the sublingual route, what you have to do is that the drug is kept inside your mouth below the tongue. So what happens is that drug directly enters into the systemic circulation, and here also drug has bypassed the liver. So this route of administration can be utilized in cases of emergency, and nitrates itself is the example of the drug which is given via sublingual route. Also, the indication of prescribing nitrate is that acute attack of angina. So in that case we give nitrates. Next, there are few examples of other routes of administration like parenteral. Parenteral, we have intravenous, where our drug is giving inside the vein, and we know that it has 100, it is bypassing the liver, so first pass metabolism is not present. Second is the intramuscular route. So if you look at this diagram, the intramuscular injection is given at the 90 degree. That means directly the drug is going inside the muscle. Whereas for the subcutaneous, the angle which is seen, it is around 45 degrees because it is given in the subcutaneous tissue. So these angles are important. And for intradermal, you have to remember is that it is given as close to skin as possible. So the angle which is maintained for the injection is around 10 degrees only. So these are the important features. There are few advantage and disadvantage, but we will not be covering here of these routes of administration. Others which are route of administration are topical, inhalational, transdermal and rectal. Transdermal and rectal are very important as examination point of view. If you see the diagram which is given here is that of transdermal route. Here a transdermal patch is attached to the skin. It has a contact adhesive through which it gets attached to the skin, and it has pores. So there is a drug reservoir also. If you can look in the diagram, through those pores this drug is coming out and they are directly entering into the subcutaneous tissue. For this also, the advantage is that the compliance of the patient don't have to take the drug multiple times in a day. Also, the therapeutic concentration of the drug is maintained for a longer period of time. Next is the rectal route. Rectal route has a very peculiar kind of feature. In that, what happens is that 50% of the drug, it gets first pass metabolized via liver, because 50% of the drug is entering the liver via internal hemorrhoidal vein, right? Rest 50% is going through the external hemorrhoidal vein, and they directly enter into the systemic circulation. So rectal route is given in those patients where there is an emergency situation. Also, the examples of the drugs which are given by a rectal route is diazepam. They are usually given in cases of children. There is one more example, that is of paracetamol, which is also given via rectal route in cases of emergency, because half of the drug is bypassing the liver, there is no metabolism, and directly entering into the systemic circulation. So the next topic was bioavailability. Now drug is metabolized in the liver. Now it has to reach at the site of action. So the rate and the extent of the absorbed drug which is reaching at the site of action of the systemic circulation is known as bioavailability. Now, how do you measure bioavailability? This is the diagram which shows the method of measuring bioavailability. If you see, when the drug is administered, you have given the drug via two routes. One through oral route, other is the intravenous route. When you give through oral route, you measure the concentration of the drug after few intervals. Now, after few intervals, you will see that initially the drug has not come into the plasma concentration and it takes time. So, there will be slow rise of the plasma concentration, and there will be a peak, and then there will be fall of the concentration of the drug. Whereas for intravenous, what happens is it's directly going into the systemic circulation. So, there is an initial surge of the plasma concentration of the drug. If you see, initial surge of the drug, and over a period of time now the drug is falling, and the area under the curve for both oral and intravenous route is measured. Now, what is the method implied for measuring area under the curve? That is trapezoid method. Trapezoid method. What happens? The area is divided into different trapezoids, and the area, the surface area of all those trapezoid which are formed, they are collected, added, and then area under the curve is measured. So, this is done for both the routes of administration, for the oral as well as for the intravenous. Now, area under the curve we have got, we will divide this. If you see, area under the curve of oral via area under the curve for intravenous. Also, for intravenous routes, bioavailability is 100%. Why? Because there is no metabolism. It has bypassed the metabolism, first pass metabolism. Directly the drug is entering into the circulation. So 100% metabolism is there. And if you ask, so why are we saying that it has 100%? Because now here what we are doing, we are multiplying it with 100. So the bioavailability, the unit of bioavailability comes out to be in percentages, right? So different routes of administration have different first pass metabolism also, and it will further affect the bioavailability. Next is the factors which are responsible for the bioavailability. The first factor itself is the first pass metabolism. Like if we take an example of intravenous. Intravenous is directly entering into the systemic circulation. It has 100% bioavailability. So that means the area under the curve for intravenous is the maximum. So it influences the level of bioavailability. So first pass has to decide the bioavailability of the drug. Second is the solubility. Now solubility has something to do with absorption. So if it is lipid soluble drug, then only it will cross the membrane. If it crosses the membrane, then only it will get absorbed, distributed, metabolized, and then it will reach the site of action. So the drug which is reaching at the site of action, the starting point for that drug is the absorption part. So the solubility of the drug also decides the bioavailability. Then comes the nature of the medium. What is the nature of the medium? Medium is either acidic or basic. So if the alternate medium is present as compared to the drug, it will get ionized. If it is ionized, it will not cross the membrane. Again that cascade will follow and the drug will not be able to reach the site of action. So these are the factors for bioavailability. Next is the bioequivalence. Now if we talk about bioequivalence, it is the term which compare the bioavailability of two brands of the same drug. Now same drug, if you say so, let's for an example we take paracetamol and we take two brands of that drug. One is Calpol, other we can take Crocin, right? So if we want to say that Calpol and Crocin are bioequivalent, we will measure the bioavailability of these drugs. Supposedly we say that 100 units of PCM is the standard. Now Calpol show bioavailability of 120 units and the Crocin shows 80 units. So can we say that these two drugs are bioequivalent? Yes, we can say that, because the acceptable limit of saying two drugs bioequivalent is that there should be either 20% above the standard range or 20% below the standard range. So if it is 80 or 120, this is the acceptable limit for saying two drugs bioequivalent, right? But there is a catch to this. we do not say this is not a standard statement for those drugs which have narrow therapeutic index. Why? Because these drugs have a narrow range. If there is a slight difference in the plasma concentration of these drugs, if the drug crosses the above limit, there will be toxicity, and if the drug remains below the lower limit, there will be no therapeutic effect. So we have to calibrate the concentration of these drugs within that range only. So the example of these drugs, the drugs which have narrow therapeutic index, it is phenytoin. So we never change the brand for phenytoin. You can take Calpol also as well as crocin if you have a headache, because they are bioequivalent, but you do not change the brand of phenytoin because they have narrow therapeutic index, and it might affect the therapeutic effect in that patient, and which can lead to the reoccurrence of the symptoms of the disease. So with this we have completed today's lecture. I hope you liked the lecture. Thank you. Have a nice day.